Hey everyone, look who we have here today. Now, most of these guys are from Australia, but they all have Australian accents. That's what we decided before we went on here. So we'll call it the volumes 5 of the Australians, Final Cut Pro TV Live. So over to my left, Ian Anderson.
Hello.
Down below him, Lee Herbert. In the middle, Roger Bolton from Coremelt. And right below me, we have Matt Goddard, who normally does all of the fashion shows that I'm very envious of. The ones, a really nice one, a really nice fashion. So did you do it this year, Matt?
I did, yeah. It was a bit different this year, but yeah, we did it again this year. Yep.
Don't tell me all the models wore masks.
No, nobody wore masks. It was while we had no cases, so it was it was wonderful.
Wow, fantastic. So, how is the video production right now in Australia? Do you guys live? How do you live in proximity to each other? Everybody spread out?
Yeah.
Me and Lee are the closest ones. Yeah.
And they're down south, so this works quite well for the way that this is all arranged.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
up north. Yeah. If we were comparing it to the US, Ian would sort of be in, let's say, New York, and Matt and I would be in Georgia.
Okay. Okay. Because Australia is a big country. It really is. I mean, landmass-wise, it's very big. People sometimes don't realize that.
There's a fun experiment you can do, Richard. If you go outside and look at the moon, that's Australia. That's how big we are.
Wow.
So think about that next time you look at the moon. It's like, oh, and it's about the same size as the continental US, I think. Maybe Australia's a little bigger.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I thought maybe. I mean, I'm thinking maybe it's as big as Texas. Texas is a big state, but it's a lot bigger.
Texas is not that big, Richard. It's really not that big.
For the United States, it is.
You can drive across Texas in a day.
Sure.
Yeah. For the United States, it is.
Yeah. I've spent the entire day on a plane going up and down 6 times, and I haven't left the state.
You were going.
And that was going in one direction. That was one direction, one flight, all the way.
Wow.
Oh man.
So Roger, I was talking to LumaFusion. They were on one of the last shows. Terry Morgan and Chris Damaris.
Yep.
And they told me that you have the very first plugin for LumaFusion on the iPad. Stabilization.
This is true. This is true. Hello.
Oh.
Nope. Freaking out. We do. This is because we have spoken to them and they were very interested in including our stabilization. And the way we've worked things out is that it's going to be available to all users of LumaFusion for free. They don't have to buy anything extra. And they get basically the same stabilization that is in our plugin for Final Cut Pro.
So I have lots of questions about that. Number one is it the same code as Final Cut Pro and then the iOS? It's got to be different, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, okay, it's got to be different for 2 reasons. One is that, well, it's Apple Silicon, but I mean now Macs are also
right
A1 chip, so on. Yeah, I mean the code is different, but the results should be the same. If you put the same clip through, like exactly the same clip through, you should get the same result.
So the other question is, how are people, this is the very first one on iOS, very first plugin that I've seen for video, right? Am I correct in that?
Yes. Well, okay. I don't know. There might be other third-party video editing apps that have something like plugins. I'm not aware of them. But we're kind of not really a plugin in the same way, in that this will just be integrated into the next version of LumaFusion. It's not like you'll have to download this and install it separately.
I see. So going forward then, when more plugins are available, you make more plugins. Is there going to be a distinct iOS plugin store versus, like, the way you buy them now for Final Cut on the Mac?
The way, I mean, okay, so iMovie doesn't allow plugins on iOS.
Okay.
Right? It used to. A long time ago it used to. So not on iOS, it used to on Mac. That's right. What I imagine would happen in the near future is that some plugins for LumaFusion they might want to do as an in-app purchase.
Okay.
So then it would download it and install it. We decided, the way we worked things out with the team from LumaFusion is that we didn't need to go that way for this particular plugin.
Okay.
With what we wanted to give to the users. But it is certainly possible that other plugins, including maybe other plugins from us, might go that way in the future.
So I'm going to ask you this question. We'll ask everybody else as well, but you have to go to work? Is that what you said? Something? You have to go to work, Roger?
Oh yeah, I'm going to be working again after I finish this because I work for my own company and you never stop working.
Now let me ask you this question, since you're an iOS developer specifically. Is Final Cut Pro ever going to come to the iPad, to the iOS? I mean, I'm not asking if you know. I'm asking just generally, is it possible? I mean, I guess it's possible, but,
it's possible, but like, what's the goal? What's the goal here? What do you want to be able to do? Because you can already start an edit in iMovie and take the FCP XML to Final Cut Pro. You can now start an edit in LumaFusion and then take the edit using FCP XML to Final Cut Pro. So the question is, what's the goal? What do you want?
Right, and LumaFusion is way, way far ahead of where Final Cut Pro would end up at this point, because they've been doing it for years, the touch interface, right?
You could say that, but obviously if Apple wanted to throw enough money at it, they could do something quickly. I mean, I don't know. Are people going to start using iPad Pros with a mouse and a keyboard as a computer replacement? Because if people are going to start doing that, then it makes more sense to have Final Cut Pro on iOS. But I don't know if that's really popular.
Boy, everything's wonky this morning. This is way too big. What the heck's going on here? Trying to adjust something went, wow.
Is that really true? iMovie can't do vertical movies?
I didn't know that.
Really?
Either. Let's put that back up there. That doesn't make sense. Wait a minute. What is going on here? Why can't I resize that? Oh, there we go. Let me resize that.
Try.
There we go. Now I got more reasonable. I don't know. I don't know that for a fact. So Nuno says LumaFusion is not as intuitive as Final Cut Pro. Well, you're comparing one on the iPad versus one on the Mac. That's one of the things. So LumaFusion does things that Final Cut Pro doesn't do. A lot of things that I like. Having a mini timeline under the viewer for the entire timeline is one. Having the ability to color code clips is another. Have the ability to lock tracks is another. They have a magnetic timeline and the ability to lock tracks. Their project viewer, the project can be scrubbed. In Final Cut Pro, you get a single thumbnail. I'm not sure why, after all this time, you can't scrub a project in Final Cut Pro in the browser. You can scrub a multicam. You can scrub a compound clip. You can scrub a regular clip. And when you go to share, you can scrub the project in the share window. right? All those things, but you cannot scrub a project in the browser yet. You can in LumaFusion. So there's trade-offs, obviously. It says it's only 16 by 9 lands. Yeah, you're right. They had a project library. Bill Davis is one of his favorite features that they took out was the project library down at the bottom where the timeline was. But I'm not sure why.
But there are a couple of those that, again, they're not directly built into Final Cut per se, but you can kind of wrangle your way around it. So, for example, if you're on a laptop with a touch bar, when you're on your project, you can, that gives you like a little thumbnail of your project, so you can scrub through that. I've actually got a video coming out on my YouTube channel in the next couple of days, where I show you a little trick to get colored video clips, where basically it only really works with B-roll, but basically what I do is I assign audio rolls to different types of B-roll. So, for example, this camera gets assigned this audio roll, this camera gets assigned this audio roll, slow-mo, high frame rate stuff gets assigned this audio roll, standard speed gets assigned this audio roll, and voila, you have colored clips. It's a bit of a workaround, but it's pretty easy to do, actually.
Right. Well, that's interesting. That's a good point. Yeah.
The color coding and the audio rolls. Yeah, but the color coding only works if you don't have if you don't have audio on it, right? Because if you have audio on the clip, doesn't it override the color of the clip? Or are you using audio rolls rather than separate video rolls?
I'm using audio rolls, and I pretty much only use B-roll because obviously I'm not using the audio from the clips. So I'm muting all those clips. Yeah, but if you think about it, so for example, my bread and butter is corporate talking head sort of thing. So I'm only ever going to have the standard audio on my A roll, and then my B roll there's no audio anyway. So, and what I use it for is it's really easy for me to see where have I used high frame rate stuff and where have I used standard frame rate stuff. So I can go, just again, absolutely having colored video, having the same functionality that we have in audio rolls for video and effects would be nice. I absolutely agree.
Yeah. Or just, how many times I've heard people say they use the emojis in the browser to distinguish, but they're really using color. They're using a red apple, they're using a yellow banana, because if you changed all the emojis to gray, they'd be useless, right? If they were all gray, they're really using color, which I think that'll be coming. I don't think that's that hard to implement. Be able to color code a clip or just a folder or something in the browser. So, Roger, what else is going on with CoreMelt besides the plugin for LumaFusion, which I was pleasantly surprised. I was really surprised.
So, obviously the other big thing is Apple Silicon native, and at the moment our plugins are not Apple Silicon native. We've released one product, our new product, which is Apple Silicon native and also runs on Intel. That's the StyleX product, which uses trained machine learning to apply styles to clips. So it's not just color grading like a LUT, it's actually adding texture and grunge-like effects, basically. And that's pretty cheap products, and you get 50 different styles with it. So the reason why we did that and haven't got the rest of our plugins out yet is because when you can make your software native for Apple Silicon, unfortunately, it's not just a case of recompiling, which it is for some other programs, standalone programs. We and all the other plugin developers have to also move to a new version of the FXplug API. So FXplug 4 is the only one that's native on Apple Silicon. That had other issues, which I can't really get into because they're quite technical.
Sure.
But we wanted to basically do a new product starting from scratch in FXplug 4 first to work out the issues before going back and then making all our other existing products native. The other thing is that the performance under Rosetta is just amazing. Like, when we do have a native version, it'll be like 20 or 30% faster. It won't be that much faster because Rosetta 2 on Apple Silicon systems can actually just emulate Intel code that fast.
Really?
It's amazing. So I benchmarked Blender using not even a native version of Blender, the emulated version of Blender, rendering quite a complicated 3D scene. And the lowest spec M1 Mac Mini was faster than a quad-core i7 from like 3 years ago.
Right. Well, I think that would always be the case, though, wouldn't it? A 3-year-old computer would be slower than one that's ran new. I understand the M1 is even compounding faster, but still.
It's basically, I was very pleasantly surprised. I thought their emulation would have a much bigger performance hit, but it's really, really good.
So it's much better than the first round, the Rosetta 1, then.
That was a long time ago. You're talking about PowerPC days.
Yes. But the Rosetta 2, they just come out. So when Apple shows these things in their WWDC or their event, it always looks fantastic. So this is one case that it actually works pretty darn well. That's what you're saying, Rosetta 2. Yeah.
No, but you can run if a game has a Mac Intel version on Steam, you can run it on an M1 Mac Mini. The performance is really good. You can play all kinds of games emulated, and they're running at 60 frames per second with high graphics turned up to full. It's really impressive.
So do you think the new M1Xs or the M2 is going to even be better then? Apparently.
Of course. Mm. I mean, I've been waiting. I have an M1 Mac Mini, and the new iMacs are just basically the same chip as the first M1 system. So, but yeah, as soon as I can get a new MacBook Pro with an M1, I mean like the full size one, not the MacBook Pro M1 they have now.
Right.
And the big question everyone is waiting to see is, are they going to have discrete GPUs still, or is it only going to be the GPU that's built into the Apple Silicon chip? And we don't know the answer yet.
Well, Ian does.
We have to wait and see.
Ian just said no.
Yeah, but he's guessing.
I'm guessing, but I would be amazingly surprised if they're going to do a discrete GPU. Look, they might figure it out for the Mac Pro, but the next one, they're just going to up the core count of what they've got already, and I think they'll get at least past the ballpark of the previous best laptop chips and on par with desktop chips, but they probably won't surpass them a lot yet. But the CPU is so much faster. I think we'll all be fine with that. And
hang on. Let me make a note here, because a friend of mine just bought a $800 Windows laptop with a NVIDIA a 2060 built into it. Right? If they can't match that, then that's a problem, I think.
Well, the other thing is they have now on the MacBooks, don't they have the built-in graphics and the discrete graphics? You have a choice.
Yes,
you can choose.
That's using AMD discrete GPUs, and that's the question. We don't know, will there be discrete GPUs in the next Apple Silicon systems?
So it's not something separate. It's not in other words, the built-in graphics in the chip, and then a separate GPU unit outside of that.
Yeah, the current Intel MacBook Pros, there is your main Intel system on a chip, and that includes Intel Iris integrated graphics, and then they have a separate chip, which is the AMD
That's
Radeon.
What I thought. So why couldn't they do that again?
I think they might. Ian thinks they won't. But anyway, let's not get into that argument anymore.
That's fine. Don't you guys know each other, right? You guys, I forgot to introduce everybody. You know Ian? I know you.
Of course I do.
I know you do, of course. You guys work together. Just wanted to make sure.
Let me just go on with something else new that's coming, which I can let you guys know a little bit about.
Okay.
Is that we have been working on our own enhancement to the 3D capabilities of Final Cut Pro. And obviously there are other solutions for that, but we think we could do something a bit different to those other solutions. And if you've tried using the built-in capability of 3D models with motion, it's very limited. You can't change the texture, you can't do anything. You can just load a model pretty much. So we'll have something which is in that area, and we've been working on for a while, which we think is going to be quite interesting for people.
Do you guys that work with motion?
It's not ready yet.
You guys work with motion. Do you think that, okay, it's been 10 years. Has motion advanced 10 years worth? It doesn't seem like it from the outside it has. In compressor motion, they both you're just like this. Final Cut Pro has expanded, much bigger over 10 years, but motion has always been just little incremental updates, it seems like.
Well, it depends. The updates have been very selective. So if you were excited by the 3D stuff, the 3D text when it came out, or 3D objects, they're both really good, but there hasn't been lots of little updates all over the program very often. It's been one big thing. And if you didn't care about that big thing, then But I mean, if you do want to learn motion, I might have some new courses over at Mac Pro Video that just go have a look. It might be interesting.
Are you're keeping up with the current version?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. From a developer's point of view, they have added a lot of stuff to motion because you got to remember, motion is not just an end user tool now. Every single plugin has to be wrapped in a motion template. So they have added a lot of stuff that's especially specific stuff that we asked for in some cases.
Okay.
The big one that they still don't have is proper expressions. Linking a channel with mathematical expressions would allow some really cool things. And I wish the particle system had been improved. It's still pretty basic as well. But yeah, they have done a lot of stuff under the hood that has enabled us to push things further, because every time they want to add something to the plugins, they also have to have a way you can support that in the way you wrap the plugin in motion as well. So yeah.
Obviously, people from the motion, whoever works on motion, always also works with Final Cut Pro. There's some kind of a handshake there. But are they distinct? Are they distinct teams? The Final Cut Pro team and the motion team, generally speaking?
I think they are.
Okay.
As far as I know, yes.
Yeah. They
have different product managers, and I think they do have different teams, but obviously they talk pretty closely.
Right. More than Final Cut and Logic, because those guys.
Well, they're on different continents, so
right.
They don't talk so much.
Right. It seems like it took a long time. I always, when Final Cut finally got the Logic, some of the Logic plugins, I said, can't you trade things with Logic team back and forth a little bit? They give you plugins, you give them something else. Like for example, Logic has the ability to have notes per project or per track. Is it per different notes? You can actually have notes that are in there, copy and paste, because I always transcribe things and I can just read down the notes and put time code in there. And to this date, 5-10 years in Final Cut, you can't do any notes in Final Cut anywhere. Seems kind of odd. You can't bring a PDF in and just, edit it,
There is a notes field on clips, but I don't think anyone ever really uses it.
Well, it's just a little field. This is a whole,
it's kind of hidden
panel.
Away.
In Logic, you have a whole panel. You can do, and it's per project and per track. I can't remember, but there's two different separate note fields. I use them all the time, and I kind of miss that in Final Cut.
That's what Lumberjack.
Use captions for notes.
Right. Well, I mean, just the whole. I'm going to see a whole text document. It linearly. Like for example, transcription, I can copy and paste from it and put it wherever I want to. But you can't open up a text document or a PDF document in Final Cut. I think that's kind of odd.
Well, you can open up a PDF, one frame per page.
To edit.
The colors are off.
To edit the text. To copy and paste from the text. Yeah, that's what I mean.
It's not a text editor, Richard. I think we can cut them a little bit of slack for not putting in text features.
You can in Logic. Logic's the other pro app.
That's okay. Not everything's a kitchen sink, though.
Well, it doesn't have to be the kitchen sink, but copying and pasting text seems to be pretty basic.
Richard, I do need to go, because I am literally going back to Eberhard to discuss a new version of code with him.
Okay.
But I will have more, so maybe I'll come back on and chat to you again when we've actually got some new products out. Absolutely.
Before you go, are you going to NAB, Roger?
This year, I'd say it's pretty unlikely. The reasons are complicated, but let's see.
Well, I understand. It's a little different in Australia right now and traveling and all that. I completely understand that. But we
have to ask permission to leave the country in Australia.
Oh, you do?
Let's not get into that anyway.
Okay, let's Let's don't get into that. Okay, Roger, I'm gonna.
Yeah.
Now I have to switch the layout, gentlemen. So that's gonna take me a minute. Thanks for stopping in,
Bye,
Roger.
all.
I sure
Roger.
appreciate
See
it.
you, Roger.
Bye.
Bye. So I'm
See you,
going
Roger.
to go to preview mode, and I'm going to switch to 4 up, and I'm going to switch to. This is. Let me see. I got to switch these names around. Ah. Well, actually, what I'll,
Leave the
He's
names
ruined-
up. It'll be
Ruin
fun.
your flow.
Well,
Which one of us gets to be Roger?
let me see. I'll just hand type them in for goodness sakes, and maybe I'll get them right.
Oh dear. Is everyone going into a blocky sea of more blocks? I think I've
Yeah,
been
my-
blocky this whole time for some reason.
Yeah, my frame rate's just taken a nosedive.
Has it?
Yeah. Yeah, and everyone's for me, everyone's clear except me. I look clearer in my tiny little preview than I do in the thing back from
Yeah,
Ecamm
no,
Live, and I don't know.
You're pretty soft on our end.
I'm plugged in with a
Yeah.
cable. I don't know what the deal is.
Yeah.
Ah well.
Let me
That's
just.
right. We're not here for the pretty faces.
Let me just
Well,
update this real
some
quick.
of us might not be.
I'm going to
Yeah.
change. See,
Yeah, speak for yourself, Matt. Ian moisturizes.
here we go.
Hey,
Now I'm going.
I know it's very much a first world problem, but my setup here is I've got my 16-inch MacBook Pro, and then I've got a Dell something or other, and then I've got my XDR display, and I can't use one of the M1s because I could only run one of those displays, and that diminishes my work area by a lot.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so yes, I have predictions on what's going to happen. Now, this is not especially well informed, I guess. This is just me with my consultant hat on, trying to figure out what's going to happen.
Sure.
Apple's pretty consistent on their pricing year over year. Okay, so the newer Macs replaced older Macs at very similar price points. Now, I'm using Australian dollars, looking at all the Australian points here, so this won't make sense to American audiences, so apologies for that. But essentially, here in Australia, you pay $300 for a RAM upgrade or a hard drive upgrade.
Okay.
Any chunk is $300. And so we can basically ignore the RAM and, well, just count in $300 if you're going from 8 to 16, from 512 to 1 terabyte. They're all a $300 upgrade. So what that basically means is that you end up paying on the old Intel 13-inch MacBook Pros, the 2-port to 4-port difference is $700, but that includes one of those RAM upgrades. So basically, you're paying about $400 for the extra ports. So one of my predictions here is expect to pay about another $700 for the next gen 14-inch, which will start at 16 gig of RAM and go up from there. I would guess if this is the pro level machines, they'll just start a notch up. And the 16-inch will start roughly where the old one did, which is, I think, another $400 or $500 for the bigger screen and nothing else.
Okay.
Now, that means for me, it depends on how many of those GPU cores they put in these machines. I want the smallest machine and I want the biggest GPU. So me in the past was always, okay, I guess I have a laptop and I have a desktop because I need the desktop grunt for doing video editing. I've been cutting a job on this M1 and coming off this hard drive, and it's a training course, but some bits of it were 4 streams of 4K multicam, which I was playing at 20 times speed. Unsurprisingly, that did not go smoothly, but that's not surprising. This is, very entry-level 8 gig machine. I want to see a bit more of that. So I kind of want a bigger machine as well. But I'm now torn, and it all depends on how much Apple push this idea of the same chip in multiple different form factors. Because if they're going to do a 14-inch MacBook Pro with all the ports and the maximum graphics power, then I'm all in on that, and I need an external screen. And I'm thinking a gigantic OLED TV is going to be in my future, because I already watch TV on one of those. I've already plugged the M1 in. It's amazing. It's beautiful. And so it's either that or a massive iMac and then a cheaper laptop. I don't know. Where do you guys sit? Would you go for one great machine and do everything on it, or go for a big grunty desktop with a big built-in screen and a smaller laptop for field work? How do you split? One or two?
I've always just had one. I'm still very much the MacBook Pro run. Plug it into a screen when I'm at home and take it on the road. I think anything that I need to do on the road is, any MacBook is going to be more than capable of it. So it's the only downside of this M1 stuff and the GPU chat is this idea of like the external GPUs and the discrete GPUs, and that would be the only addition into a hardware setup for me, would be an eGPU of some sort, the extra grunt, if that was even an option. I'm not even sure whether it is anymore with the M1.
It's not.
So.
It's not.
But do you think in the future it's not going to be an option? I'd be surprised.
I would really doubt it, because the whole way that the M1 chip works so well is that everything is so tightly integrated. There would have to be a seriously amazing external GPU to overcome the massive bottleneck that you would have in going through something else. Even over Thunderbolt 3, you were already bottlenecking what a last-gen card could do. So the next-gen cards are not going to see the performance which you'd get if they were internal in an external box. So that means that maybe they'll be able to do something with the next-gen Mac Pro. If it still has PCI slots, maybe that will be the only way to make those super grunty GPUs work. But at the same time, I mean, support was never great on those. There's only been a few, limited support for a few cards. You're certainly not going to get the NVIDIA stuff. I think the built-in GPU is going to do really, really, really well. I've just become so addicted to a small machine that I don't want to carry around a 16 again. Did that for a year and too much, whereas this is so light, fits in the tiniest bag, and I want to do everything on this, but I want a giant grunty screen as well. So, yeah, Lee, are you a one person or one screen, one Mac, two Mac?
If you'd asked me this in 2019, my answer is now quite different in 2021. So I, for the longest time, was an iMac and a laptop person, and then I found that throughout 2018 and 2019, I was traveling so much. It was actually really annoying going from one computer to the other and keeping files synced and all that kind of stuff. And at the beginning of 2020, I went, right, stuff all of that. I'm going to buy the top of the line 16-inch MacBook Pro, spec it out. It has got 64 gigs of RAM, 2 terabyte, like spend all the money, get as much as you could. Well, that was great timing because I traveled so much in 2020.
Sat at home for
and the architectures really lasted very well.
Yeah, I know, right? That was wow. Did I future-proof myself with all that money spent?
Maybe the Australian government will give you some kind of a tax break because they messed up with your travel.
On the bright side, at least now everyone knows that I never know what's coming from Apple because I would not have spent all that bloody money if I knew what was coming.
And I would,
I don't know.
Sorry,
you know what? I'm tempted by. I like the idea of having a desktop. And a small laptop, like my ideal setup would be a 14-inch MacBook Pro if that's coming, and then we've all seen the rumors of that mini Mac Pro. That looks like a cube, but with the modern stuff. So
right.
I don't know
how
practical it is, but I like the idea of it.
Yeah, look, if they pull off the Mac Mini Pro, which basically a Mac like the 14 and 16-inch laptops, which we want. If they can put the maximum number of GPU cores in one of those, then that's another way to get my giant OLED dream. I'm just kind of running the maths and saying, look, I don't want to invest another iMac like I've got sitting here with a lovely screen that I can't use and I really want to upgrade. I want to buy cheaper machines more often and use lots of external drives. So I'm not locked into one big expensive box, because there's going to be a lot of change over the next few years. It makes sense to spend as little as possible because next year will be even faster again, and it is really getting really pretty fast. If you look at how the A chips have gone year over year, there's so much faster each year.
What do you think the reason is they stopped the iMac Pro? They publicly announced that they're stopping that.
Because it wasn't any faster than the top-level iMac, and they
You mean the M1s?
didn't need it. No, the iMac Pro was only very rarely faster than the very top spec regular iMac.
Okay.
So they didn't really need the complexity of keeping it around. And I think we can all be pretty sure that the next iMac that's M1 or M2 based, likely the bigger one will be M2, M1X, who cares, whatever they call it.
Right.
Whenever that comes out, that will destroy any previous iMac, with maybe the exception of GPU power. And so I really hope they can nail that. But it looks like they will if the rumors are true, and we've had lots of weird leaks that have actually been, hackers getting specs is pretty convincing, especially when the iMacs come out and they look like the leaks. It's like, okay.
Right.
This is potentially actually accurate. So hopefully.
Well, plus John Prosser, he shaved his eyebrows off last time, right? One of the big leakers.
Yeah.
I think that's Apple messing with him. I think they said, okay, we'll raise you on that one. We're going to change the date. And he shaved his eyebrows off because he predicted it was going to be in March, the spring event. And I don't think he's going to.
That's why you never offer to eat your hat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But everybody seems to think the 16-inch, well, he does specifically, is coming out at WWDC, I mean.
Our fingers. We've just got a few days to wait, and we all get to enjoy happy new Apple excitement. Woo!
So we have a comment from Ronnie Cortons, our friend. I have quite a lot of Macs. Since I bought the M1 MacBook Pro, I only used this one for all my editing, and have been a big screen attached to it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Well, hey there, Ronnie. And yeah, look, it's great. This last job, I decided I want to edit the whole thing on this, and it did work. There are a few weird gotchas at the moment. Like if you want speed from an M1 Mac at the moment, you really need to buy a Thunderbolt dock, because there's some fairly serious issues with the M1 USB handling and Thunderbolt handling. Actually, there's some issues.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I wrote an article for FCP.co which talks about both of these in SSDs. But if you get a Samsung T5, and I recognize this is not the fastest, but these are really popular.
Right.
And there's other drives like this. Like I've got this other, just a third-party SATA drive in a random enclosure. Neither of them do their full speed on the M1 when connected directly. They should do about 480 megabytes a second. They do about 370. And that's because they're connecting at 5 gigabit, not 10 gigabit. And they should be connecting at 10 gigabit. They do connect at 10 gigabit on the iMac. The M1 can do 10 gigabit. The handshake does not accept it. It doesn't work properly. So they see about 20% speed loss. Number two, and this is a much weirder one, if you have a really fast Thunderbolt drive, they don't work at full speed, like 2,700 megabytes a second.
Right.
Unless you have a Thunderbolt display attached, which is truly bizarre. OWC found that one, and my article links to their blog about that, which is just bizarre. Now, I don't think that problem goes away if you plug in a dock, but if you have Thunderbolt dock, then the first problem does go away, because then you're connecting USB 10 gigabit through the port, assuming your dock has enough 10 gigabit ports on it. This one does. It's got like 3. It's pluggable, and it works fine. So that does help a lot. And there was a weird problem with Big Sur and some external monitors, such that if you plugged in with a DisplayPort, it would connect with the wrong color system, so YUV, not RGB, and then all your colors and your gamma were wrong. And they fixed that just recently in 11.4.
Is that right?
Depending on which external monitor. I've got an LG 27-inch here, and the colors were wrong through DisplayPort, correct through HDMI, and now, after 11.4, they're correct through both.
Wow.
Well, Ian, I'll raise you a little bit on those. A fun little gotcha that I found with my M1 Mac. If you're using a G-Tech shuttle RAID array, they will not mount. They will not even show up on an M1 Mac. And you'll love this. In order to install the drivers and get them to show up and mount, you've got to go into the recovery partition and turn on, I can't remember the wording, but basically sort of like turn on unsafe boot mode. I'm sure this. I don't think this is Apple's fault. I think this is obviously G-Tech has done some weird, funky thing that their system's using. But you basically have to sort of and the language is like I've checked with some people that I know, and they said, look, you can do this. It's fine. Like, don't worry. It's just a signing thing.
Right.
But the language is pretty darn scary, where it's like, if you turn this on, your Mac will be less secure. And you're like, oh, should I do this?
Yeah,
right.
So they're getting you to disable
access all my data, but oh dear.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they're getting you to disable SIP, which enables them to run might be a custom kernel extension. I'm not sure, but like long term, that's not going to be supported. Long term, that is just not going to work. I found RAIDs can be a little funny. OWC have got the software working now on Big Sur. That works fine. So you can use a Thunder Bay, and that's good.
when I try and plug in my 70 terabytes of all my footage and it doesn't mount, hilarious. I know.
Yes,
Oh, hilarious.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. That's what I'm afraid of.
Almost every kind of RAID has had some kind of issue with Big Sur. Like, the big one that a lot of people have. What's it, Promise?
I have Promise.
I've never used a Promise RAID. I have no experience with them, but I believe they didn't work. It does work. Yay. Okay, good.
Yeah, my Promise,
I thought they had some weird issue. Okay, good.
Well, at least my Promise, and the irony is my Promise is plugged in via the GTEC because I back up the GTEC onto the Promise.
Okay.
So obviously there's a signal going through it because the Mac recognizes the Promise that is plugged into the GTEC and the GTEC is plugged into the Mac, but the Mac doesn't recognize the GTEC.
That's weird. I have one of each too, Lee, and I when I boot into Big Sur, I thought I could see them both. I might turn one.
Just my specific model.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah.
There is one more really fun thing, which is not an M1 thing; it's a Big Sur thing. Some brands of camera, when you format an SD card in camera, they don't give them a name. Like, it's not untitled. It's not Lumix, which is what the GH5 does. It's not EOS Digital, which is what a Canon does. It's just blank. Big Sur will not mount those SD cards. So do not format your card in a JVC camera and expect it to mount under Big Sur. You have to then open it in Disk Utility and give the disk, which it can see, a name before the Finder will mount it. I only discovered this through turning up to a job with miraculously an old laptop with me as well as my new one, and I could actually just offload the files. It was like, this is...
Right.
But I've just formatted the card. Aha, that's the problem.
This might
but
be
other than that, it's great.
Yeah, exactly. This might be the first time that I skip a Mac OS. I am not on Big Sur. I'm on Catalina, and I might go right to 12 when they debut 12.
Catalina was worth skipping. Big Sur is better than Catalina.
Not for me. Not for me. I have too many plugins that don't work. Audio plugins in Logic that just don't work, and the United Audio interface and all that kind of stuff. It's mostly audio plugins more than anything, but there's a lot of little things that I depend on. Little applications that I depend on that seem like they're a little quirky in Big Sur. I know a lot of people that I respect. I mean, you like it. Steve Martin likes it a lot. But I have all this junk going on. And I have, if you see my menu bar, it completely fills up across the top of my screen, and I have icons completely filling up my dock on the bottom. I've hidden them now. Well, I'll just show you up here. It just, some of this stuff doesn't work. Look at this. I mean, under Big Sur. Some does not work under Big Sur. Let me show you my screen. Somebody commented one time, I've never seen such a dock. Look at my dock down there. Now, of course, this is with the Mac Pro.
Wow.
Yeah,
this is with the Mac Pro.
Richard, I think...
Go ahead.
I think you might have a problem, and we might have to stage an intervention.
Okay.
Yeah, Richard, this is a safe space. We all love you, and we want to talk about your problem.
I understand.
Yeah, now, I mean, that's... I should show you at the moment. I'm experimenting with a new system, which is hidden dock, hidden menu bar. And this is kind of just in case I was to get an OLED. I don't want burn-in from the menu bar or the dock. So it turns out it is actually possible, because there's a new little doohickey you can get called MenuWare, which takes your whole menu bar and you can trigger it with a hotkey. And if you have a mouse which lets you have an extra button you can dedicate to said hotkey, then you can summon a menu bar, the whole menu bar, wherever you like. And so you don't need the menu bar anymore. And so all those little icons can go away. And the only problem is I don't know what time it is anymore, because I use that menu bar clock.
This one that I have though, Ian, you can hide what you want. See, there's everything, but the stuff that I have, like my time, is still there. That's why I like that particular one.
I do hide everything. I use vanilla. The only problem under Big Sur is you can't hide the time. You can only make it an analog time. And so when you're recording a tutorial, that's kind of a pain, because the time should be the first thing to go. And,
yes, absolutely.
So if you make a mistake and you want to edit it out, best to work quickly so they don't notice.
You can clone it in post.
That's true. You can just do a screen grab without it. So one of the things that yesterday I showed that Final Cut Pro was shown at WWDC 2019 and it was shown at 2020. Both times. It's unusual because Final Cut Pro usually does not make a presence at WWDC. But 2019, it was very prominent, and 2020 maybe a little less prominent, but it certainly was there with the M1 chips. Are we going to see Final Cut Pro again in 2021, do you guys think?
I think it depends. I think if we're going to see these new, more powerful chips, I think absolutely. Because I think the reason why Apple brings out Final Cut at WWDC is to show off how powerful their chips are.
That's correct.
And so if they want to show off how powerful their chips are, I think absolutely we're going to see Final Cut.
Are we going to see 10.6?
I don't. You never know. I don't think so, but.
Well, the thing is this. I mean, 10.4 to 10.5 was. There's been no major update from 10.4 to 10.5. The way they normally did. Every time there's a full number update, it's always been big, lots of features, lots of stuff. So we're still waiting on that big update, and I understand why they called it 10.5 to distinguish this is the M1 Silicon Mac version of Final Cut. I understand that marketing thing, but Logic came out last year, right at the beginning of the pandemic, with 10.5 major update. 6 months later, they changed to 10.6. I think Final Cut can probably do the same kind of thing. I mean, it seems like it stalled the last couple years, the last 2 years, I would say. We didn't see any preview of a big feature update at the last two Final Cut Pro Creator Summits. They have nothing to show us. And it seems less innovation has happened over the last 2 years than maybe some of the prior years. So I think we're due for a big update, and I think they're working on something like that. Doesn't it make sense that they would be?
I hope so.
Well, it could have been taking ages to get
Yeah.
the performance on M1 though. Like we just don't know. I mean, we'd all love to see some great updates, but there's tons of stuff that can and probably should be happening behind the scenes to make sure everything's as fast as it can be on the new Macs. So,
but they already did that with 10.5, right? That was 10.5.
Yeah, but that was M1, and now there's M2. If there's new GPU stuff, maybe there's new stuff to be optimized. I mean, look, I would expect to see it at some point. Ideally, I'd like some warning and a couple of weeks. I'd like a couple of weeks of, free time because I've got a book to update. If they want to change it to 10.6,
yeah, exactly.
Is this subtle enough for everyone?
Ian, if you want nothing to do, come down to Victoria.
I'm okay. Thanks. Thanks. I don't think I'll be. No, thanks.
I think they showed us in 2019 when the Mac Pro was debuted at WWDC. They said it was coming out in the fall, and yes, technically December is still the fall. It came out in December. So I think the MacBook Pros are probably going to be released sooner. So if they show a new version of Final Cut, first off, listen, the other thing is it's the 10th anniversary of Final Cut Pro. June is 10 years, 10th birthday of Final Cut Pro. So what better time to celebrate the birthday, a new version of Final Cut? I mean, at least preview it at WWDC and say it's coming out whenever,
Yeah, that'd be nice, but we know they're not big on those kind of anniversaries.
They haven't. You're right. They absolutely have not so far. But this is 10. This is not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, or 9. This is 10.
Yeah, but Richard, last year they removed the 10.
Well, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
It's just Final Cut Pro. So we're back in 2008, 2009 territory where we're just kind of like all sitting on our hands wondering what the Pro Apps team is doing. With the original, with Final Cut Classic, like what's going on? What's coming? They've got to be working on something, and then they drop Final Cut 10.
Yeah, so, but we kind of knew that, right? When 7.0.3 came out and nothing happened for like 2 years, we knew they were working on something. Sure. I mean, this is kind of the same kind of thing almost. I mean, Michael Cioni was on the show, and Michael Cioni said, why don't they just drop the moniker Final Cut Pro? Get rid of the whole launch of Final Cut Pro 10 and call it something else. even if it's based on the same code and everything. That was his idea. It was an interesting, concept to get rid of all the initial launch baggage that came with, with that.
It's been 10 years though, so it's that launch baggage is the people that are hanging on to that launch baggage are never going to use it. They're hanging on to it for their own reasons, whatever.
I say we make them use it. I say we wrestle them to the ground and make them use it.
Yeah,
I think
there are people. Sorry, you go, Ian.
No, sorry. I think there are enough people now who've never encountered that launch baggage and just have heard Final Cut Pro is a great app. And I think the people who like Final Cut Pro outnumber the old grumpy people who would still rather be cutting on a Steam Deck. So I don't care. Sure. I don't care anymore. I'm going to move on. But at the same time, I don't disagree that those people would maybe be served by a new name. But it's been around for long enough. Projects are still called projects and not sequences or edits or compositions or whatever everyone else is calling them.
But here's the other thing interesting about Apple, and I'll show you a perfect example. Well, we've seen Apple go to this point where they're extremely, all they worry about is being thin. And then last year they came out with the iPhone with protruded lenses. The iPhone was a little bit thicker. Finally, they changed the remote control for the Apple TV. I didn't get a new Apple TV. I just bought the remote because I hated that other remote for the Apple TV. So they're changing. This is a retro. This is like the original iPod, right? This click wheel's like the original iPod click wheel. It's a combination. So at one point they're getting thinner, and then they said, wait a minute, this Mac Pro, people want something else, so they went back giant size. This Mac Pro is bigger than my other Mac Pros. And the MacBook Pros, didn't they get a little thicker? Did the Mac Pros, the 2019 16-inch, was that a little bit thicker, or was that a little bigger?
Don't know.
And then now they're talking about HDMI ports, MagSafe, and a card slot. Once again, somebody yesterday on the stream we had says, Back to the Future.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. But that's the thing, that those are things that they took away at a certain point, and people loved them, and people have been up in arms for however long. It's like, why did you take this away? It was working and it was great and you did a good job of it. So why did you change it? And then they come back and they go, oh, okay, well, here it is back for you, only better and new and improved. And look what we've been working on. We took it away so we could just give it back to you. There's this sort of marketing stigma that comes with it all. It's like Apple takes things away because they can, and then they give it back to you in the other hand because they can. And Final Cut suffers from that horribly. It's all just bad marketing.
Well, I agree that marketing is definitely a problem. It's absolutely definitely a problem with Final Cut.
It's a huge problem.
Yes.
I was listening to an Art of the Cut podcast with Steve Holfish, and he was talking to an editor who had been on Final Cut Classic and had gone to Avid, and had kind of heard about the new Final Cut, but hadn't ever dipped his toe in. And Steve Holfish was talking to him about this amazing feature in Resolve, and he explained it to the other editor on the podcast, and the other editor was like, that would be amazing. And what he was describing was auditions.
Oh, is that right?
They won.
Yeah.
And it's just I was listening to it, and I'm like, if only more marketing from within Apple kind of yelled it from the hilltops. I've been looking up WWDC rumors and stuff while we've been chatting here. I'm scrolling through Mac rumors and 9to5Mac, and there are video ads for Photoshop that are appearing in my feed Photoshop is the one app in the whole of the creative industry that does not need marketing. Photoshop is the photo.
It's ubiquitous. Absolutely.
Photoshop.
It is ubiquitous, but it's also got the most
image,
competition.
you Photoshop it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, but it has more competition than anything else. So I think they're feeling a bit vulnerable with Photoshop, I think, in a way that they don't feel quite so vulnerable with Illustrator, InDesign.
But I think what Matt's point though is
Premiere.
Yeah, I think though what Matt's point is that we don't seem to see a lot of outward marketing for Final Cut to the rest of the world.
No, we don't.
Now we all know the people who work on the Final Cut team, and we all know how much they love Final Cut and how much they are evangelists and how much they're advocates for it. But I think the challenge is that they are a small part of Apple, and I know nothing. This is just my assumption, but the assumption that I have is they're doing as best as they can, but they struggle a little bit to get bigger decision makers within Apple to go, you know what?
Absolutely.
Here's $20 million. You go and tell someone about how great Final Cut is.
Yeah. And look, to be fair, you don't see a whole lot of advertising for any NLE. You know, we edit, but a lot of people don't. You know, there's far more people do Photoshop and graphic design than do video editing of any kind.
I agree with you there. Yeah.
But I tell you where I think.
Marketing.
Sorry, Matt.
Like that sort of targeted stuff is where it comes from. Is what it's needed. It's like, yes, there are only a certain amount of people, but you need to talk to those people.
Well, I'll tell you where I think the marketing team could really target, and it's not an easy thing to do. I appreciate it, but if they could, they need to get into film schools and universities and public schools and get them while they're young, because I work with,
absolutely.
I work with a lot of students. You've got a book. We all know it's great.
No, it is great. It is great. It's the best book out there.
Sorry, I'm getting this.
Get it into some schools.
Which teaches my local school, where my daughter goes, teaches Final Cut Pro. So they're getting some copies of the book. So yay. It's happening.
It's fantastic.
Go ahead, Lee.
Like I'm working, all the film students that I work with, like in high school, they're working with Final Cut, and as soon as they get to university and they go to film school, they're onto Avid or Premiere. So we need to get to the lecturers who are making those decisions. And I'm not saying, force them or anything, but I'm just saying, because I guarantee you, Final Cut is really easy to sell to someone. You just show them how it works, and they go, wow.
Sure. Yeah.
So we all we have to do is get in front of them.
Well, you're saying I think that's Apple's responsibility.
I think Apple should pay me to do it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, we're some of the evangelists for Final Cut Pro, but I really think that this is really up to Apple to do some of this stuff. Now, like you said, there's definitely a strata inside the Apple Corporation. You have people that are perhaps clamping on what the Final Cut Pro team itself wants to do. Clamping down on some of the things they want to do. It's not just the Final Cut Pro team not doing these things. It's Apple corporate, for whatever reason, restricting.
Well, Richard, in fairness, and like, I don't think, I think maybe saying clamping down is maybe the wrong term, in the sense that I don't think there's anything malicious or anyone in Apple has anything against Final Cut. It's just that they're a big company that does a lot of things, and Final Cut just isn't the biggest priority for them.
No, I understand. My joke is, I don't know if Tim Cook knows what Final Cut Pro is. Does he know?
No, I'm sure
give me
he does.
20 minutes with him. I'll sort it out.
There you go. Steve Jobs did. Steve Jobs absolutely did. Go ahead, Ian.
He did, but if you look at other apps like Pages, Keynote, Numbers, they don't get ads, and they probably have far more users than Final Cut Pro. Keynote is an amazing app,
but far more people are going to be using a word processor in presentations, and we are a bit more of a niche.
We are a niche within a gigantic company which has only got so much attention to spread on things.
We're a 3 or 4 million person user niche, though, not like a couple 100,000 or 10,000 or whatever. So there's lots of Final Cut Pro users,
absolutely.
millions, probably 4, Probably 4 million, I would say at this point.
Yeah, but Ian, in the time, Richard, in the time it took you to say that, Apple sold that many iPhones.
No, I understand that. I mean, people have always, Apple's the difference between Apple and other companies. They're a hardware company by and large. But, okay, 4 million times $300 is 1.2 billion with a B dollars. That can fund some stuff.
Years. You spread it out.
They are a $1 trillion company, though. So they don't care about a couple of billions. This is the thing.
What did you just say, Ian? They don't care? This is the problem. This is the problem. They don't care.
They don't have to care about any one tiny particular thing. We kind of treat Apple like a regular company, but they're not like any other company. They're the biggest company on the planet. The rules don't really apply to them because they've only got, they've still got a normal number of executives and a normal number of people in charge, and they've only got so much brain space. So it's like, well, we're going to do this campaign about this, and this one about this, and this one about this. There aren't another 20 ad-approving people to approve ads for all the great apps that deserve them. Like, you never see an app for Xcode. You see WWDC stuff tangentially, but it's never really advertised to the public. It's only us nerds who really find out about this. So, Apple advertises the stuff which makes most of their money, which is iPhones and then occasionally Macs, iPads.
I don't care about the advertising to the general public. I mean, like Lee's talking about, get it into the schools, get it into the high schools, get it into the colleges, whatever you have to do. Get it, that's how you do it. To people coming up, if they're used to Final Cut Pro and see how easy it is. Look, we have a cabal in Hollywood. I've talked to them, a Final Cut Pro cabal. They have a secret organization. You have Mike Matzdorf, you have the other Mike. What's the other Mike's name?
Yanovich,
yeah.
Yeah, so those guys are in there fighting, trying to get Final Cut in because it benefits them. Probably Charlie Austin as well. Because it benefits them, because that's what they want to work on. People say Final Cut can't do a movie. Nonsense. That's complete nonsense. Well, they've already done movies. We've already seen them do multiple Hollywood movies, so it absolutely can be done.
Yeah, the thing is that people haven't seen it firsthand. There's a ton more people who've made a movie with Avid than made a movie with anything else. And so, editing is just a tiny little part at the end of a very expensive pipeline. It's the glue which puts a lot of other pieces together. There's no way that you're going to get someone who hasn't actually done that and seen that done to be involved in signing off in the process of maybe jeopardizing something they know is going to work. So it's unfortunate that, it's just very, very difficult to change big workflows like that. And typically anyone leaving the safety net of Avid is because they themselves are involved, like the director wants to do it, or the editor is the DIT and is involved in the post and can manage how this stuff is handled because they know they can do it properly. It can be done, but most professionals in the film industry are deeply siloed into their job. And so it's very hard to integrate that knowledge and broaden it through. It's going to happen in the indie space and the auteur space, but not in the general space.
Well,
not quickly.
I think Eric just made a very good point where, on the ACE and American Cinema Editors magazine, you see ads for Resolve and Premiere, but you don't see ads for Final Cut. Just little things like that. I was actually going to say, like Richard, the stuff with the schools and things like that, maybe that stuff is happening and we just don't see it. But again, if we don't see it, it's like, if a tree falls in a forest.
Right, But Lee, Apple does ads for Resolve. All their keynotes feature Resolve. They do ads themselves. So, reaching millions of people, viewers, they do ads in all their keynotes. They always show Resolve.
And you have to remember the antitrust argument.
Actually, really nice.
So Resolve is by all accounts good software, but you have to remember Apple's also facing antitrust. Anytime they promote their own software ahead of competitors, they are poking the giant beast. And there's probably very good reasons for them not to promote their own software at all, because it could cost them dearly if they do.
Yeah, and you make a good point, but I'll refer you back to your point about we're a niche within a niche. I don't think the antitrust people would even notice if Final Cut got advertised in a couple of trade magazines.
No, but
Yeah.
it gets used as an argument in a court, and people have heard of Premiere and Final Cut Pro. Enough people have heard of them that it becomes, what, Apple's promoting their own software? As
How
if
dare they?
It would actually be like that.
It's ridiculous. Of course they can promote their own software. Of course they can. Absolutely. So we talked about the MacBook Pro. We talked about the possibility of an update to Final Cut Pro, at least a preview on the new Mac. Well, you're absolutely right about that, Lee. Both 2019 and 2020, Final Cut Pro was only shown in the context of new hardware, both times. So if there's new hardware this time, perhaps they're going to show a new version of Final Cut. They did in 2019, I think, when the Mac Pro, they said this is a future version of Final Cut coming out in the fall.
Yes, I will couch the fact by, I think they might announce new hardware, but they may not ship new hardware immediately. They've been kind of announcing and saying, you can buy this in a month. And maybe they'll push that a little further and saying, look, well, we'll announce this now. It's coming out August, September, that kind of thing. Who knows?
Right.
They might do something like that. I think anyone who wants a bigger laptop is now happy to wait for it and won't be buying an Intel unless they have to or really don't care or know about this.
Right. But my niece was buying a new Mac for school this year, and she's, her and her mom, my sister, were saying, well, look, we have this one and this one. I said, don't even look at the Intel, okay? Just get the M1. Well, what's the difference? It's cheaper. I said, yes, but Apple has dropped support for it. I mean, they're dropping support for Intel. They're not making them anymore. So I got her the video editing version of a 13-inch MacBook Pro with 16 gigabytes of RAM and everything. I spec'd it out for her. She doesn't need that. She just does, typical college stuff. But I said, that's okay. Just get this. Pay for it. You don't have to worry about it.
She'll get a good few years out of it.
Absolutely. She's
Go
ahead.
I was going to say the thing that I really want to see out of WWDC that has nothing to do with Final Cut or the main hardware is HomeKit stuff. I think last year and maybe even 2019 there were like little tiny announcements about the general standard that Apple, Google, and whoever the other one is, to get a HomeKit standard for Siri and Amazon, that's it. Amazon, Google, and Apple getting together for a HomeKit standard, and that's happened now. So I think we'll see a lot of that stuff, which would be really nice. And then we can start getting home automation that doesn't matter what ecosystem you live in; it just works.
That would all be good, although I have to say I'm still really not sold on most of the integrated smart home stuff. I will say I recently installed a smart door lock, and I would recommend installing a smart door lock. Just go to Wirecutter, use their top recommendation. It's great. And so that works with fingerprints. You can use an app. You can use a code. And it'll record when somebody came home. If you need to check when somebody did come home, that's nice. You can connect it to various smart things, but I am deeply uncomfortable with the concept of somebody being able to remotely unlock my door. So all that stuff can just stay off, and I can now fingerprint my way in, and I don't need to carry keys anymore. So
as long as you have a hardware override, as long as you can use a real key. Override. A real key, because people got locked out of their homes when something went offline a couple months back.
Yeah, so it's real key. It runs on batteries, which you can replace anytime you like, and you can use an external USB battery if you need to. So
I mean, we've learned from Skynet, haven't we? We need that killer switch.
We have not learned from Skynet.
Well, it seems like we've not.
No, we haven't.
But I want that kill switch. That's the ability to kill. I mean, we learned RoboCop was one, Skynet was one. What was the other one?
Wasn't the kill switch the issue, Richard? The kill switch that they turned on for Skynet, and then it killed everyone?
I mean, the ones that we control, not that they control.
Yeah, I think the thing that we have learned from things like RoboCop and Skynet, the Terminator films, is robots are fine, computers are fine, just don't give them weapons.
Well, They're going to make their own weapons. Look what happened to them. We had that pipe.
Don't give them arms then. Don't give them arms. Let them control my lights. Let them unlock my door, but don't give them arms and legs.
Too late. Have you seen those things that MIT's been working on, where they can jump and open doors, and we are.
Yeah.
Well, look.
Yeah.
We had on the East Coast.
Pandemic,
we had the pipeline shut down because of ransomware, and they had manual overrides everywhere, and it still was ineffective. They went back and turned the computers off, turned the internet off, and they went back and started turning on manual, but it still took like days or weeks. That might have been just manipulation of the gas price on the East Coast. So that could have been what it is. I don't trust any of those people. Tony says he refuses to use those type of locks. Only use the keypad style locks that have a physical key as well. Physical key is absolutely mandatory.
Okay. This does have a keypad around the outside, and it does have a physical key you can access as well. So, agreed. It's all good. It is actually really good to not have to have a key, but yeah, it's good to have one if you absolutely need one as well. But yeah, look, there's a million things which we could be worried about in terms of technology. I wish there was a bit more diversity in the platforms, because the reason we keep having problems with ransomware is the monoculture, which everyone keeps building servers on. If every major hack has been on Windows servers, so stop building everything the same. If it's going to, just like a virus, if everyone's susceptible, then everyone can get it.
Right. So the other thing, like the Skynet thing, what was that series that had Starbuck in it?
Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, that was the other one that things got out of hand. The Cylons, right? That was the other one. See, we're seeing the future right there. We have to learn. They're showing us the future. We have to learn from this stuff. Although Arnold was good to have in Terminator 2 and 3, he turned on our side. So
if the last year and a half has taught us anything, we learned nothing.
I think if they'd learned their lessons from Terminator 2 and 3, they wouldn't have made a Terminator 4.
Well, that's, yeah.
I think they're up to 6 or 7 right now.
Or 6. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I think it's a mistake.
There's a severe amount of
Anytime
retconning going on there.
Yeah, you can retcon an entire movie out of existence because it got bad ratings. I think that's a mistake.
So talking about upgrades, they keep talking about the AirPods 3. Are they going to merge AirPods Pro and AirPods, you think, into one line with AirPods 3?
That'd be nice.
I don't think
the
so.
challenge with that would be price.
Well, just raise it up a little bit. Raise it up from the AirPod level. I mean, or else bring the AirPod Pro level down, one or the other.
I think the rumor is, though, they'll make the regular AirPods look more like the AirPods Pro, but they won't have the Pro features, which make them great. The transparency, the noise cancelling. They're excellent. Right. And I think way more exciting than any of that, and something which most people haven't clocked onto how awesome it's going to be, is the thing arriving in June for Apple Music, which is actually going to work with almost any kind of headphones, which is the Atmos support. So virtual Atmos. Atmos, you can fake Atmos if you like, but the problem has actually been getting content actually to the device. And spatial audio on these is fantastic, but it only works if you're viewing it off a device, which is still so dumb because I want to watch it on a big screen, but listen to good audio through this. And you can't do that unless you simultaneously watch the same movie on your Apple TV and through your phone, and it's just not going to be in sync. It's not going to work. But the fact that you can do this with any phone, people are going to. Here's my another bold prediction for you all. People are going to lose their minds about hearing their favorite albums in a whole new dimension. This is one of those things. It's like mono to stereo. It's going to be such a big deal, and nobody else is going to be able to offer this immediately because Apple's going to have done the deals to support Atmos for everyone, and Spotify won't have done the deals yet. Hi-fi audio, is going to sound almost exactly the same to 99% of people, and no one's going to really care about that. But actually Atmos, which does work everywhere on every device, even Apple TV, because you don't need to be oriented to any particular place. It's oriented to your head. So the spatial audio doesn't need a location to be fixed to. So it's going to work really well. I can't wait to hear, like, a classic, like, REM Automatic for the People. That was mastered in Atmos 10 years ago, and I've never heard it because I didn't want to spend $100 on rebuying that album so I could sit at home and only listen to it in a stereo, which I've only owned for the last 2 years. That would be stupid. But if I can stream it anywhere and hear the sound coming from behind in front, man, I'm going to lose my mind even if nobody else does. So will you guys join me? Can we all lose our minds together?
Well, the thing was, I think it
would be pretty cool.
Was the 80s when quadraphonic sound was supposed to be a big thing and it completely fizzled out? Right? It didn't really happen.
It's all about consumption. It's all about consumption, though. Like, if you have to sit at home and listen to it through your dedicated quadraphonic setup, that's pretty limited. Suddenly you can do surround sound on the bus while you commute. That's the difference. It's convenience. Convenience always wins, and we have never had convenient surround sound. It's been really tedious surround sound.
Right.
It's going to rock. It's going to be really good.
Matt, I've met Ian and Lee at the Creative Summit multiple times, and I met you at 2019 at NAB. What were you doing there?
2018, yeah.
2018. What were you doing
there?
What
was I doing at 2018?
Yeah, 2018.
I was doing the same thing that everybody else there. Just
as a tourist,
talking.
or were you there for a company as just a tourist?
I was there as a tourist. I was there to I was really there to meet up with all of the Final Cut evangelists at the LumaForge Faster Together stage. I was there for that. Yeah. Everything else was a bonus.
Yeah, absolutely.
I doubled. Yeah.
I got a picture of you talking to Michael Cioni in that room.
Yeah.
That was the best. That Faster Together was absolutely. That was the best. Yeah. You know why it was the best? That little room where you met Michael Cioni. They had two rooms next to each other, both on the show floor. One was the stage area where they had presentations, and next door was like just a people get together kind of a place. They had M&Ms.
Yeah, it was great.
They had M&Ms in the middle of the table. Yeah. That's come on, you can't beat that. Multicolored M&Ms. Yeah. Everybody just free could walk in and have M&Ms. I want to see more of that.
I think. I want to see LumaForge doing more of that stuff. I miss it.
I do too. I do too.
I miss. I know Sam Messman's doing a lot of very cool stuff in the in the filmmaking and indie filmmaking space, but I miss hearing his voice in the Final Cut community. That's for sure.
Well, he's doing the school thing, the high school thing right now with which is
amazing.
Movies.
Which is again, like we're talking about the education of younger filmmakers like that.
Exactly.
If anyone's going to get people to make films and use Final Cut and move up their career trajectories using that software, it's going to be Sam and We Make Movies. It's that kind of thing.
Right.
It's offering it in that space for people to use and to learn. And yeah, sure, they can go on and you'll learn Avid and Premiere, but it's another tool in the toolkit.
No, absolutely.
And the more people we can teach to use it, the better.
Now, OWC bought LumaFusion. I don't know if you know that or not.
Do they?
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, no.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
They did. Yeah. So hopefully OWC will certainly be at NAB. Hopefully they have something. The last NAB, 2019, the last in-person NAB, Frame.io was really the center point for Final Cut Pro stuff at that point. They took over, I mean, not 100%, but they took over. That was the place where you go for Final Cut Pro people. We're stopping by, and they had Final Cut Pro integration. So hopefully somebody takes up that mantle again, because I don't think Apple's going to be there this year in person. I'd be really surprised.
No, they won't be there. Yeah.
No.
Blackmagic has committed.
Yeah, I guess they're going to have to get special permission if they want any Australians to go. It depends if their staff is based in Singapore or not, at which point
Can we just smuggle a couple of you guys out? just smuggle you out, just somehow get you?
If we could be sure of coming home and not
Oh,
dying,
that's a problem.
those are
That's
two
a problem.
separate issues. Getting back into the country is tricky.
You don't think
people have been waiting to come home from the UK for months who can't get flights. They keep getting flights cancelled.
Well,
It's
also,
very, very
Ian
difficult.
made a good point last time we were chatting about this. Is it would be interesting to see if we could or couldn't get travel insurance for the US, because whenever we go over to the US, it's always expensive to get travel insurance for the health stuff, like, if something happens from a health point of view.
Sure.
And we don't know if insurance companies would cover us for any COVID-related stuff.
Yeah, I have looked into this, and it can be done. You can buy
cool.
COVID-friendly insurance. So, yeah, look, I'm vaccinated. I would be happy to go next year. This year is not even an option.
Well, here's a question I asked yesterday. So NAB switched from April to October. Are they going to switch back to April again at some point? Because
maybe they're just going to wait and see. Because maybe they if they see that the new dates are hugely successful, then why not just stick to the new dates?
Because I don't want them to.
Hugely successful.
I don't want them to, because you have IBC in September. You have NAB in October, and then you have the Creator Summit in November. I can't be going to the West Coast that much. I can't.
Well, IBC this year, I think, has moved to December.
December. Yeah, I know. But they did that. They were, I'm saying normally they're in September. And, having IBC and NAB 1 month apart just doesn't seem optimal for the community. People, spending money and...
Yeah, look, I think from that point of view, it's like they'd have to work something out, because you're right. Having them like a month apart, one or both of them are going to suffer in terms of
exactly
all that kind of stuff. But I mean, that opens up that whole can of worms of just trade shows as a concept are changing and adjusting. And I mean, even before 2020, everyone was talking about how trade shows were dying. And you look at, one of the big things of trade shows is that companies use them to announce big things, big products. And companies were starting to not do that, where companies were going to go, well, why should we share the stage with all these other companies and announce our thing, and we're stuck to the schedule? We've got to have it ready for the conference, whereas we can just announce it when we want to. You look at why Apple pulled out of Macworld, which from a personal thing, that was really upset. I loved Macworld, so
I did too.
It sucked for me that it went away, but I understand from a business case why they did it. So yeah.
Well, I understand that completely. But Lee, didn't you hear what I said about the M&Ms?
Well, like as you were mentioning the M&Ms, my COVID brain went into, oh my God, everyone's putting their hand in there. I don't even want to think about it.
That's true. That's true. Now you had to do the hand sanitizer before you dipped in there, but you can't do.
Well, little baggies for everyone.
Well, there you go. That's better. Yeah,
anywhere
that's better.
That someone else put their hands. Yeah.
I think the problem with all conferences is they're not an efficient way to get the information to the right people. So I've only been to one NAB in 2015. I was there for Roger doing demo stuff, and I gave a presentation at the Faster Together stage that LumaFusion or LumaForge had put together. And I think that was the first time that like the equivalent of power windows in Resolve were announced for Final Cut. Because Roger and I had independently figured out you could do color correction in a shape mask and then track it. And it's like, oh, hang on, this could probably work. And we could just put this out there. And so I remember talking about that. And I remember, Sam being really, really excited by that thing. But it's only really when Sam goes on like MacBreak Studio and talks about it that something like that actually gets serious traction. One person, talking about something in a small room might get to a few people who are important people who are better placed to spread the word. But you're much better off just putting it on YouTube these days. And the world has changed in the last 5 years.
But you see, there's two sort of different priorities, I suppose you could think about with that. Like for me, and I think for all four of us, the reason why we go to NAB and IBC and the Final Cut Pro and all, is to network. Like, I go to talk to people, it's to hang out. Like,
absolutely.
it's the social element that's the most important thing. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's cool that I get to see the cool new toys and whatever. But on the other hand, how does, like, me being sociable and all of us getting to know each other, that doesn't make the conference hosts any money. So I understand from their point of view, it's like, look, it's great that you guys get to hang out, but we make this conference to make money, and if you guys hanging out doesn't make us money, we can't have the conference. So,
but it does at the Creative Summit.
The Creative Summit is a slightly different story, but trade shows,
yes.
While for me the benefit is the networking, that doesn't translate to a financial benefit for the people who are running it.
No, I understand, but the thing about what you're saying, Ian, is absolutely true. YouTube is very effective, but there's no reason why you can't do both. I love meeting all three of you guys in person. I love getting up at the Creative Summit in the morning. I go to the lobby of the Juniper Hotel. I go across the courtyard and have bagels with Chris Fenwick or Steve Martin or any one of you guys in person. You know?
Yeah, I mean, Lee and I would not have met John Cleese had we not been able to go in person.
I have a picture of John Cleese at the Juniper. I have a picture of him going across the lobby. I said, what? I said, John Cleese uses Final Cut Pro? I never knew that. So I think so we have NAB in October. We're going to have very likely the FCP Creative Summit in November. And I'm thinking that that's probably going to be a hybrid thing this year. I think they're going to have some in person and some people who can't make it do a virtual session on the big screen in a classroom the same way they did before. Now the issue is whether there'll be Apple
I think
visiting.
it'll come down to Apple, if Apple want anyone visiting.
Right,
because
exactly.
if Apple don't want to host any live sessions, then they'll just go virtual again. That would be my prediction. It comes down to, does Apple want it?
They could still do a virtual Apple. They could, in other words, the people in the room could be talking to the Apple people. You know, the closed session that we did, they could still do that in person. But the whole thing with Creative Summit, last year was fine, but the in-person is much better. You know? So a hybrid would probably work.
Yeah, I think, though, if we're not actually visiting Apple, then there's no point in being in Cupertino. And so I think Apple may well just not want to expose people. You know, I don't know. But I personally speaking, I would not be unhappy if it was all virtual again this year, because I know I won't be there anywhere. Right. So on purely selfish grounds, yeah, virtual, let's do it. That'll be great. Let's get together for coffee once more virtually. But you know, if you guys do get to go, then great. I hope you have a good time and take lots of pictures.
No, I'll be streaming live the way I always do. That's what I go there for. I'll be doing all the live streams as much as I can. So, you know, that's the whole reason I started doing the live streaming is because these events would happen and I wouldn't know anything was going on. I couldn't see what was going on in real time. I couldn't get pictures. Maybe once in a while a picture would float out. You wouldn't know till days later. So I said, to heck with that. I'm going live as much as I possibly can so people who can't make it can get a feel for what's going on as well, right? That's the whole reason I started doing it. So,
and we appreciate you for it, Richard.
Thanks.
It's definitely that little window onto stuff that you can't make it to is huge. You know, we talk about that that connection and the networking. It's as close as you can get in a virtual kind of method to being there and talking to people, just being a fly on the wall.
Yeah,
through those
absolutely.
live streams. So, yeah.
So whether I go to NAB or not, I'm not sure at this point. One of the reason I go to NAB in the past, number one, is LumaForge used to sponsor me to go there. So I'd like to get some kind of sponsorship to help defray the cost. But even more important than that is there has to be some Final Cut Pro buzz. Okay.
Yeah,
I like Black Magic a lot. I really like that company. I think they're fantastic, and I love going to their space. They have like acres of space on NAB, but that's really not enough to get me to fly from the East Coast to the West Coast. Apple buzz, something happening with Apple, or like Frame.io doing Apple stuff, or Lumaforce, Faster Together stage, absolutely. That's going to be some absolute Final Cut Pro stuff. If none of that happens at NAB this year, I'm not as likely to go. So,
Yeah.
it's always Final Cut Pro is my main focus. I mean, in 2016, let me just think, 2019 was the last one. They didn't do it last year. So 2017 and 2018, Apple presented, right? They presented off on the South Hall both times. The one time was, where is it? Well, 3 times. Was it 3 times they did? They did at least 2. They did the presentation there for us. That's really cool, you know, with FCP Works, and then Steve Martin had the dinner afterwards. He used to host that.
Yeah, that sort of stuff, like that networking and getting that sort of that little, I don't know, that little bit of an eye into what's going on behind the scenes is the funnest part of those kinds of things.
Well, the very first time I was there at NAB is when Apple announced 2 million seats. I was actually streaming on Facebook Live from that event. And I said, I'm just going to do it. If they tell me to stop, I'll stop, but I'm just going to go ahead and stream it live. So I got to stream live when they did 2 million users. And it's got like, I don't know, 7,000 or 8,000 views on YouTube. And it was nice. It was nice able to do that. And then the next year they said, we don't want anybody taking videos and stuff, because it's not really set up for, you know, good video presentation and good audio and stuff. And I understand that. So I got a snapshot that time of the 2.5 million. But the first time I was actually streaming live from the Apple event, maybe that was before they realized what was going on. But I was holding the phone up. I was holding the phone up, and you know, it was on Facebook. So I'm glad I got that anyway. Those guys and gals at Apple, the Final Cut Pro team are incredible, some of them. Now I just found out that Wes Plate left in April. He was only there for a couple of years. Yeah.
I was going to ask if he's left, because his personal website, he's running ultra marathons.
Yes.
And his website just mentioned had worked at Apple, and I was wondering if it was actually past tense or if he was being coy. But if he's left, I think he must be focusing on ultra marathons. Ultra marathons mean he's running 250 miles, by the way, over multiple days.
Yeah.
Crazy. It's great.
Hardcore. Yeah.
I got up this morning and did my 2-mile walk. That's plenty for me. 1 cup of coffee, check some Twitter stuff, and then do my walk every morning.
Yeah. I'm only allowed 5Ks from my house at the moment. It's what, like, how many miles is that?
They have an ankle bracelet on that tells you where they can trace where you are, or they just use your iPhone to trace.
Well, no. Yeah.
Okay, well, hang on. Here's an idea for you. Now, this is an idea which I took from Wes Plate, okay? So he did a thing where he ran down every street in his town, okay? And he used run tracking software, I think, and I asked him what he'd used, and he said, I think it was Runkeeper. So there's a various bits of software you can use to do it. Now, I did try it out. It didn't work for me. So I just manually did it using Strava and screenshots and manually combining them in Photoshop, because I like masking things in Photoshop.
Sure.
And I did the same thing, but I set my sights a little bit lower and decided to cycle my suburb. So I cycled down every single street in my suburb, and I've done that. It's like 100 Ks. Like, it's not this really big suburb, and all the tiny streets do add up. Now, you've got 5Ks radius. You could do this. You could cycle your suburb.
Ian, you lost me at run.
That was a long time ago. That was 10 minutes ago, Lee.
I don't running. Get a bike. This is the cheap, lazy equivalent of what Wes did for much more effort.
I do a 5K walk every morning. So
okay.
Well, swap that for an e-bike, and you can do every street in your suburb. It's actually a really fun thing. Once you've been down every single street in your suburb, you have seen every house. You know that street. When someone mentions, "Oh, I live in here." Sure. Yeah. Well, you use something like Strava, actually track your location, and then put them all together on a map.
So one of the neatest tutorials I've seen recently was the guy that did the LUT for Final Cut Pro in Pixelmator Pro. Have you guys seen that?
Yes. Did you know you can also do it in Affinity Photo?
Okay. No, I did not.
And Photoshop.
But it's very easy. I don't have any Adobe products. I don't allow them in my house. So I have Pixelmator Pro, but it was so easy. You take a still out of Final Cut, take it into Pixelmator, and you adjust the things, and then just export a LUT and open it up in Final Cut.
And I'll tell you what's really useful with that, not even just for Final Cut, but what I used it for is, so you're familiar with a company called Zacuto?
Mm-hmm.
So sure. Zacuto, they make rigs, but they make EVFs as well. So I'm an ambassador for them, and the newer EVFs, they'll take 3D LUTs, but the older EVFs take 1D LUTs. So you can actually use Pixelmator or Affinity actually to really easily convert 3D LUTs to 1D LUTs.
Okay.
To upload them to a monitor or something that only accepts 1D as opposed to 3D LUTs.
I didn't know the difference. Now I do. So what else? Yeah, so as far as Final Cut goes, what are you guys, some things you'd like to see, like a couple things, your top couple things for a new version of Final Cut?
Well, I should probably just give a public shout out to Alessandro Ricuglia for listening the last time I was on this show to my outlandish request that, hey, photos can look at the content of videos and assign keywords. Wouldn't it be cool if you could do that in Final Cut? Which is now a real product that you can buy called FCP Video Tag. It's like, what? Okay, so I'm going to just wish for a few other things that people could make.
There you go.
Can we make the edit button? That'd be good. Just one big button. I'd like my edit to be finished. I'd like a button to convert iPhone footage to have infinite depth of field controls, like super shallow depth of field for free. But much better than portrait mode. Obviously, that would be terrible. And look, that'll do for starters. So devs, start your engines. That'd be great. But definitely go check out FCP Video Tag. Very, very cool. You can actually, I just throw a bunch of footage at it. It comes back with keywords telling you what's in the footage. Amazing.
Yes, cool.
Yes, he was just on my show. Alex was.
Indeed.
Yeah, he was just on my show talking about, and we gave away copies of that app. Exactly.
Yes,
very, very cool.
Alti.media, you can find it.
Alti.media, and the way you remember that, it's multi.media without the M. He told me that trick. I said, oh, there you go. So, Ian, I don't understand what this USDZ stuff is, models for 3D stuff. What is that, USDZ?
USDZ is Apple's new 3D format. Can be stills, can be animations. Developed
Apple's
with Pixar, but it's open source.
Okay.
So it's a public format, and that's why various other 3D model repositories are actually supporting it now. You can bring that into Motion, and you can rotate things, you can adjust a little bit of lighting, but you can't retexture things, as Roger was saying. So in some ways it's kind of limited. You also can't incorporate it in a scene with 3D text or 2D text. So within Motion, 2D text, 3D text, and 3D objects are all separate things that, if they coexist, don't share the same 3D space at the same time. So the layer stacking order governs what's in front of other things. So you've really got to pick one kind of thing to work with and not try to mix them, which is a real shame. But look, the support is good, but it's not as mature as people would like Alexandra Moraes there, who, I can understand you would like better support. And at the moment, that's what some things, in some other apps, some other plugins let you do, and I think that's what Roger wants to do as well. Something like that. I look forward to seeing it.
One of the things I think we're getting that we'll get in the new version of Final Cut when they update. I don't mean if they have an incremental update. I mean if they have the full point update. We're going to see an audio mixer. I really think we're going to see that. I'm not asking saying whether you think it's good or not. I just think we're going to see an audio mixer or a roles-based mixer, maybe not traditional, but I think that's going to be one of the big ticket items, whether you think that you like it or not. I mean, I'd like it because I hate going in and out of compound clips. I just really don't like that. If they opened up in the timeline, okay, it'd be much like the video animation lane does. It opens up in the timeline, right there in the space. Open up in the timeline, it'd be a lot better. But I think that's one of the big ticket items we're going to see is a new audio mixer of some sort.
That sounds good.
Now,
I'd
Lee,
like to
obviously,
see.
yeah, go ahead.
Someone?
What,
Go.
me?
Not me?
Oh, me?
Well, either one. Ian, you were saying.
Ian, you go.
Go ahead. You were saying something.
Yeah, look, more collaborative editing would be great. The support there is good, but I'd love to see iCloud support. Even a simple timeline to let multiple people poke at things at the same time. Something more integrated like that would be awesome. Look, there's always more stuff that you could add, and if you have a look at what the other apps do, then that's all the apps just copy and paste from one another. Premiere has copied the essence of roles, so in it we'll do automatic ducking of music against dialogue, because you can assign this is dialogue, this is music, and duck one against the other. That works today, has worked for a year or more. There's obvious things like that. Can we have automatic ducking, please? And Alex has a program for that as well.
Yeah, iMovie has that, right?
Yeah, iMovie does have that, but it's very simple. So there would need to be a bit more finesse in how things are applied. But it's nothing they couldn't do. I'm sure they could do it in a better way than Premiere has done it. I'm quite sure that is doable, and that would tie in nicely to a roles-based audio mixer. That would be the perfect combo with that. So yeah, look, there's easy low-hanging fruit that they could do. They could integrate more stuff from Motion into Final Cut. Get some basic keyframes, things like that. I don't know.
Let's all play psychic right now. What would Sean Lander like to see? Another Australian. Let's try to think.
I'll tell you what I'd like to see. I'd like to see Apple just offer Chris Hocking a ridiculous amount of money, buy Command Post, and just integrate all that Command Post has into Final Cut. Just do that.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's the next 5 years of updates done. And you can even slowly bleed it out to us. I don't mind.
It's another situation of them taking something away and then slowly giving it back.
Back to the future. That's what they're doing.
Maybe they could do something where it's like copied frames identification, something like that.
Something like that.
Multiple repeated clip. Something I don't know. What would they call it?
I would like actually to give a shout out to the Final Cut team, because the proxy workflow that they introduced last year
Very good.
Bloody fantastic. And again, the usual thing that Apple does, it's not so much what they do, but how they do it. The implementation of the proxy workflow and being able to create proxy libraries, it's fantastic. So I really
agree.
Think, as much as we bitch and moan and we, nothing is ever enough for us, I do want to say to the Final Cut team, that was fantastic, and thank you so much for that.
Well, two things about that. That was 10.4.9. Number one is it came out at the end of August, okay? Final Cut Pro in the full history, the original version and version 10, never has had a feature update in August before. The reason is, at least in the United States, most people are on vacation in August, including probably the Final Cut Pro team. They're going back to school. They're not worried about updates. They released it the last week of August, which is very unusual. Number two is when that came out, 10.4.9, I said, this seems like it should have been in 10.5. Exactly what you're talking about, the implementation of the proxy workflow. Seems like that they could have saved that for 10.5. But I really like that update. That's the last big update that I really like. 10.5 didn't affect me because I don't have, I'm on Intel, so it didn't really affect me.
I think I do have one more prediction, though, is that, Apple will do stuff that some third parties do already. So maybe some kind of tracking. I don't know. Given that it's in motion already, they could at least bring the motion level tracking into Final Cut. That's motion. It's been in motion for years. Look, I'd like to see Motion be able to read audio. That would make a lot of whole new classes of plugins possible. That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to see, and again, another Coremelt product at the moment that I think they could easily Sherlock out of existence would be, and not just Coremelt, as Simon says, is auto captioning, which again is coming to Premiere really soon. Apple have speech recognition software. You can already bodge it together if you have a couple of Macs, or your way around audio MIDI setup. You just pipe one thing into another, and you can. But it's all about timing. So
no, that's absolutely true.
Things in. So live captioning, which is already in Clips, Apple's app on iOS.
Is it effective? Is it accurate?
On Clips, it's pretty effective, yeah. And the difference is it's a different kind of captioning, because when you pay for captioning or do captioning manually, you're generally putting in 2 lines of captions at once. Traditional TV captions, 2 lines appear, 2 lines go away. If you do live captioning on YouTube or in Clips, it is word by word. You can't get that unless you auto transcribe it.
So
you can't type that in and sync it word by word.
Like today, when we're recording this, Ecamm Live, which is the software I'm using, which once again is all this stuff. This is all Ecamm Live except for the browser in the lower right-hand side. It records every one of your audio files separately. Okay? So I'll have 4 audio files when I'm done, and I can take those and drag them to Descript, which is an app that I have. It's like $10 a month for transcription. When I take the 4 clips and drag them to Descript, it says, hey, this looks like it's a multicam. Do you want to make a multicam? Yes, I want to make a multicam. It makes a multicam project. It'll go through, transcribe all the tracks. It'll give me the option to filter out ums and ahs and I knows and everything else. This is all AI. This is all AI. So I go through and do all that, and then I export it either to Final Cut or to Logic Pro, and it comes through with a multi-track project already. A lot of the editing's already done for me, and I usually use Logic and further refine, listen to it and refine edits as I go. But it's it's all AI. It does it, does it in the cloud or whatever.
I think Mr. Multimedia has
cut me out entirely.
Well, here's one more thing it does. One more thing it does. It goes through and identifies that there's 4 separate speakers, and it color codes them, different colors.
It's going to get confused with Roger coming and going in the beginning. Then.
Well, that's true.
That's going to throw him right out.
Darn Roger.
Alex from Multimedia has an app which does similar things. He's got one, I think, Pod Cleaner Pro, and it will take in multiple tracks. It'll sync the tracks up. It'll do the indecision removal. There's some really cool technical explanations of how all that stuff works on his site. It's very cool. I wish I made podcasts. That would be lots of saved effort.
Well, the thing about podcasts, I always say, I've been doing it for 15 years. It's easy to start a podcast. What's hard is to keep it going. Okay. I've been doing it 15 years. It's a lot of work. A lot of work. Now, not Final Cut Pro Radio. That's been going on for 6. This is our 6th year. So we've been doing that for 6 years. We've done it continuously. Never had any breaks. Every month it comes out, or every 2 weeks, whenever. Depends on what I got to do. Like today I'll probably put this one. We'll see how accurate we are after WWDC. And then since we hit everything on the button, that'll be perfect. I'll make it into a podcast.
Sounds good. So would you like a neat soundbite summary to put up to make us look really good or really bad?
Absolutely.
Okay, so The rumors will be mostly correct, and they'll announce a 14-inch and a 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M1X or M2 chips, who cares, which will have more cores, which will be faster, with much better GPU and lots of ports, as predicted. There'll also probably be a new Mac Mini, which maybe they'll shout about or maybe just sneak onto the store. And it'll be the same guts in a Mini, but they probably won't announce the iMac for the bigger iMac for a few more months. They'll let the existing iMac have its day. There you go. That's me being wrong. Enjoy.
Will the iMac, the new one, have a bigger screen than 24? Will it be different aspect ratio? Will it be 30, 32, 34, you think, rather than the 27 that it was in the past?
Don't know. The rumors have been pretty accurate. I was dubious about 30 inches because it feels like that's cinema display territory. But hey, look, that might be the kind of thing which stops me buying an OLED.
Are they going to update the cinema?
Pixels.
Are they going to update the new XDR display in any way?
I'd love to see. Now, I have an XDR display and I love it and it's amazing. But I'd love to see an XDR-like display without all the pro features and a third of the price.
What kind of pro features would you eliminate?
Well, I mean, look, you could lose quite a few nits because I mean, it's 1,000 nits normally and 1,600 at peak, and you could easily drop it down to 500, 600 nits, and that I think would. I mean, look, I don't know how much the individual bits cost.
Right. I think it's $1 a nit. $1 a nit.
Yeah, but most people don't need that many nits, so that's a start.
How about a $500 stand instead of a $1,000 stand?
You know what? I could throw something together with a stick and some duct tape.
Some popsicle sticks and some duct tape.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get this. Like, I've got it on a Visa mount, so
okay.
Know, it's yeah, because that stand, I could justify the cost of the screen. I couldn't justify the cost of the stand.
Understand. I completely understand. I understand about the stand, yeah.
The stand.
And then the new iPad Pro came out with Thunderbolt and with it's got some specs that are better than the XDR, right? There's some kind of specification because it's a smaller screen.
Well, it'd be, I mean, on paper, yeah, but from a use case, I'd say, I mean, I haven't seen one yet, because I'm not allowed out, but I think from a use case point of view, it'd be equivalent to having like a portable XDR running around.
Okay.
Something I don't know this. I presume, but I don't know. I assume, like, one of the most amazing things for me with the XDR is, so normally when you're doing HDR grading, you need to go through like a little conversion box, like a Blackmagic box or an AJA box, to convert the HDR signal to the HDR display that you're going to. You can't just go straight from the laptop or the computer to the HDR display. Whereas with the XDR display, you don't need that translation box. You can just go straight through Thunderbolt 3 to the XDR display and monitor in HDR, which is amazing, and technically saves you a little bit of money. So I'd love
that has changed a bit. You can go to HDR on a lot of HDMI displays these days. It's a bit different, but yeah, you don't. Yeah. Anyway, please continue. Sorry.
But hang on, is that just for like end or for proper grading? If you were going out to a 1,000 or 2,000 nit monitor.
I don't think it's suitable for proper grading, but HDR support is now in at the system level. I don't know that it's 100% accurate just yet.
Yeah. So like you wouldn't use it in a high-end sort of setup. But I'd be curious to know if you could plug in an iPad Pro with the fancy new display and use that as an HDR grading monitor, because technically the specs on paper suggest that, you know, in terms of it's got all the nits, it's got the color abilities, but the connection, it'd be a software thing whether it does it or not. I think I don't know enough about that, but it'd be cool if it did. Like, imagine you're on the road
I don't know.
and you could do HDR grading just by using your iPad as your HDR display.
Because the XDR display is 2 years old, right? Or a year and a half. Came out in December, I guess, with the Mac Pro.
Yeah, give or take. Yeah.
So it could use an update. I mean, whatever the new technology is in the last 18 months, that's a long time. So I suspect.
Not at that level. There's not a huge amount that is.
Okay.
Like, I mean, like the fancy Sony that they compared it to, I think that's been around for like 5 years, and that hasn't changed.
Lee, are you using the Sony A7S III by any chance?
Yes, I am.
So how is that with the low light capabilities of that are better than the A7S II? Or equivalent anyway?
I'd say it's about equivalent. It's one of those things where, like, technically you could get them up to ISO 400,000, which
right.
you would never do because it's it just looks
too
like
noisy
scrolling across the screen.
Right.
But you could easily shoot at 20,000 ISO and not even notice it. So yeah, funnily enough, I've still got my A7S Mark II. I got it converted to infrared, which is a really cool toy.
Because they just announced the GH6. I'm sure Ian saw that. They announced that Panasonic coming out in 2021. But I still don't think it's going to be a low light, behemoth like the A7S III.
It won't be a low light thing.
Yeah.
And look, GH5, awesome camera.
Absolutely.
Like, great, love it.
Fantastic. Absolutely.
But different cameras for different things. There is no perfect camera.
Absolutely.
If you need to satisfy every requirement of can record forever infinitely, 10-bit, bigger than 4K, doesn't cost an absolute fortune, doesn't overheat. There is no one camera that does all those things.
You've left out the really scary bit. A perfect camera wouldn't need an operator, and we're all out of a job.
Well, that's the Terminator thing. That's exactly right. Yeah. So one of the things that Panasonic did announce is they're going to let the GH5S output ProRes RAW over HDMI to an Animus recorder. Mm-hmm. That's a camera that's 2 years old. They did a firmware, I guess. They're doing a firmware. ProRes RAW over HDMI to an Animus recorder. Yep. Not the GH5, but the 5S.
And another update is with the Sony A7S Mark III, you now get white balance adjustments on the ProRes RAW as well as the ISO, where before all Sony cameras, you only get the ISO adjustments, you don't get the white balance adjustments.
Okay.
But now, at least with the A7S Mark III, you get the white balance adjustments as well. I'm really hoping they bring that out for the FX6 and the FX9 as well, because I'm guessing if they can sort of retroactively do it via XML on the A7S Mark III, there shouldn't be a reason why they can't do it with the bigger cameras as well.
So the GH6 records 5.7K internally. They've pre-announced some of the specs. 5.7K internally.
Yeah, so it just means they've got a slight sensor resolution boost over this. This is about 5,000 pixels.
Yeah, 4,900 something, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can shoot in open gate with this. It's 4,992, and that's how it gets like a pretty nice image because it's downsampling that to 4K all the time. It'll be even nicer if they're taking, basically the same resolution as they have in their, S series, like the S5, like 24 megapixels basically, and doing a live downscale of that. That'll look great. But again, the pixels are too small. It's not going to be a low light monster. So for that, the Sonys are going to win. I think the Sony finally seem to have got a lot of things very nice.
Oh yeah,
like the autofocus and the look and the menu is.
Listen,
lots of nice things.
As soon as I saw the A7S III, I said, "Well, that's the GH5." They did all the things that I the articulating screen, the dual card slot, so many things. I said those are all the things that they borrowed from the GH5 because that GH5 is over 3 years old at this point.
Well, it's also all the things that Sony uses. We were bitching and moaning about
sure.
since the A7S Mark II came out. But isn't it nice that Sony actually pretty much listened to every single thing we said? Can you please do this? And they went, yep. There you go. And like, there's almost nothing to complain about.
Well, the only complaint I heard was it's only 4K. That's the only thing that complaint. Which is fine for me. I don't care. 4K is fine.
Yeah, well, like let me ask you, this stream, what's it going out as?
8K, 1080p, 1080p.
I think my section is 8 pixels. 'Cause it's not good.
Well, Ian, you're only using 4 of them.
I think that's a government thing, Ian. They've got restrictions on your pixel output. You can't leave the country, and the pixels can't leave the country.
I'm afraid not. Look, this is a nice old camera through an HDMI interface, and it doesn't normally look all blocky. I must have upset the internet gods tonight.
Well, it's okay. It looks fine. The main thing is your audio is coming through clear. We know the audio is more important, so that's the main thing. What mic are you using, Ian?
Cool.
Because you had the shotgun sometimes. Oh, you're using your Rode Wireless Go.
Yeah. So did you with magnets?
I love the magnet. I love those with those.
Well,
I don't think they're worth $20, but it's really clever, and they are strong as heck. They are really strong. So did you have the original Rode Wireless Go?
Yep, and I got the 2 as well.
It's the same with me. I don't know what they're doing with that 2, but it's phenomenal. It is absolutely
it's really
all
good.
The information they put in that little tiny screen. You can switch things on and off. The only thing I complain about is that cable that costs $25 that I haven't still haven't gotten mine yet in America. And I'm gonna yours workaround. I hope it works. It's coming today. Your workaround is coming today. I hope it does.
Yeah.
Because it's still back ordered. I ordered it, months ago. So.
Well, you see, on that, I think Ian's got a good point where he reckons that whatever's announced at WWDC may not ship because there's this chip shortage globally. And so I wonder if either Apple won't be able to get enough chips to ship the machines right away, or alternatively, what they might do is a staggered release. Because remember back in the day when iPhones were released, like the US would get them first, and then someone else, like then Europe would get them a week later, and then 2 weeks later, these countries would get them, and then 2 weeks later, another bunch of countries. So,
right.
There's my prediction for WWDC. I think that whatever's announced, we may see a staggered release.
But Tim Cook, one of the reasons Tim Cook is CEO was, and the reason that Steve Jobs hired him, because he was such great at working these things in advance, looking out for chips in advance, a year in advance and 2 years in advance, to make sure they had plenty of supply. So I think, it'll affect Apple some, but I think they're more immune than other companies are with shortages.
I think they're more immune, but there's still the laws of physics.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep. Just to explain the issue that Richard and I are talking about with these microphones. So this is the Rode Wireless Go 2, which is different from the Rode Wireless Go 1 in a few ways. One, it has 2 transmitters and 1 receiver in the pack. So you can set it up to do stereo or just mixed. You can use one as you can use dual channel recording if you like. So you can do 2 people's interviews. The windsocks attach better than they used to.
They twist on. Yep.
Yeah. So the weird thing is on the receiver, you can use your standard mini jack, which you would use if you're going into a regular camera, but it's got USB-C, and this time it's USB-C audio. The problem is, to get this into an iPhone, you need quite a special cable. And even though you might have gotten a USB-C to Lightning cable with, your Mac or some other device, it doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
They do not support the audio. And so you can order a special cable to do it. But I have a bunch of weird cables, and one of the cables that came with my Insta360 Go 360-degree camera was, and because this is an old one, this isn't the current one, this is micro USB. And so the micro USB to Lightning cable that came with this does work if you pair it with a crappy little third-party micro USB to USB-C adapter. Right, so anyone who's got an Insta360 and a weird little adapter that nobody really has hanging around, and I don't even know why I have that adapter. I've never used it for anything, and now it has come into its own. And so now I've got digital audio. If I was to plug that into the thing, and I can plug this into a phone, and it works. So
this sounds like
yay?
when I need to get footage off of a Firewire 400 hard drive.
Yeah.
I've got a little. It's actually in the drawer back there. I've got like four different connectors that connect all. So it's FireWire 400.
Absolutely, I have a couple of those.
FireWire 800 into display, and then into Thunderbolt 3. So I think it's like 4 adapters, but it works.
Different kinds of pads. So on the old one, it was just 3 levels, and now it's 10 levels. Plus, as soon as you turn on the transmitters, even if the receiver is never even activated, the transmitters are recording for 7 hours. So as soon as you turn on the transmitter, you've got a backup recording, even if the wireless goes down, which is just super awesome.
No, absolutely. You can. The individual transmitters can record by themselves. You don't need the receiver. You can just put as soon as you turn these on, they'll record audio. So this is the backup as well. So if you get out of range, you still have a full quality version on the transmitters. They just done so much incredible stuff with the twos. I had to buy them. I have 2 of the original versions, a white one and a black one. You know, for people who wear white clothes versus dark clothes. So I'm really pleased with it, except for the cable aggravation. They at least should have given us the option to buy the cable with the microphones. And they didn't do that, and it was out of stock. B&H, Sweetwater Sound, everybody is out of stock. Can't get them in the U.S.
There's another nice little thing you can get for those, which is a mic stand. Basically, it's a bit of plastic with foam on top, so you slot in one of your microphones, and it's like you've got a little handheld mic. It actually works really well. And I used a heap of Rode gear to do a live event the other day with some of those and one of the little mics and the NTG3 and all going through a Rodecaster Pro, and all of that hooked into my camera using one of these to knock the signal down from being too hot, which is a ridiculous, stupid workaround, but it actually worked just fine.
Okay, they can just cancel WWDC at this point. We've taken care of all the predictions. We know what's coming out. Tim Cook, rest. Go ahead, take a break.
Nobody knows what the software is going to be. We don't know the software. I'm happy to be excited about
Mac OS 12,
something.
iOS 15, Apple TV 15. We know all that stuff. Every year it's the
What's
same.
Mac OS going to be called? Is it,
that we don't know.
Carmel, Sequoia, Redwood?
I've seen 2 suggestions. They said that they found it in the code. But the other thing is so they have a beta for the Mac OS. Usually it comes out in July after WWDC. No public beta for Final Cut Pro, which that doesn't really bother me. I would not join the beta team simply because I want to talk about it. What would my radio show be without me talking about Final Cut Pro and what's coming out? If I was on the beta team, you can't talk about that.
Sure.
So.
Very true. All right. It's just clocking just onto midnight just over here in Melbourne, Richard, and I think I am going to have to call it a night.
I think we're all going to. I think we've done enough damage. We've done enough damage to WWDC. Hey, the guy, the Prosser guy, says that the MacBook Pros are coming out at WWDC. We'll see if that happens. That'd be fantastic if that happens. Yes. I got a 2019. I had a 2016 when they came out. Then I trade that in for the 2019. But I got the 15-inch 2019. I got it the summer before the 16-inch came out. So I'm ready to trade that in or sell it if Apple doesn't give me enough of a trade-in. And get the new one. Because I need an M1 to fool around with. Or M2, whatever the heck it is.
Yeah, whatever they call it. Whatever it ends up being.
Ian Anderson, Lee Herbert, Matt Goddard from Australia, and Roger Bolton, who was on earlier. You guys are the best. Anytime you want to come on, just send me a message and we'll get you on. When Ian updates your book to Final Cut Pro 10.6. Or as some people are saying, Final Cut Pro 11.
Please?
That's what they're saying. I don't think it's going to be 11, even though they said the 10-year roadmap and all that stuff. I think it'll be probably just 10.6, the same way Logic went from 10.5 to 10.6. So hopefully, Apple Final Cut Pro team, we all appreciate you. Twist the WWDC people's arms and get Final Cut Pro back at WWDC again. That's what we want.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, Richard, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you guys coming on. Thanks, everyone. Talk
Thanks
to you
very
later.
much, Richard.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Bye,
Richard.
everybody.